his name, but that smile, he didn't see the smile leave, and he went looking for her.
I'm going to tell on Jane. Years ago, Virgil and Joyce Chance's grandson, all of a sudden, Greg, and Steve were in the mall, and he said it's the biggest difference how people are. Someone else that they had attended church with them didn't really acknowledge him. But here comes Jane down there. She comes down through there. Hi, fellas. So, it does make a difference. Yeah. And even Steve, he used to say, well, Leroy Lager, Tom Spencer, Jim Gary, all this, different ones like that. They always make Bill Pepper. Always made sure they knew their name. They said their name. Yep. How do you do? It makes a big difference. Yeah. You feel like they know you,
like you belong.
Yeah.
You're seen.
Yeah.
That's right. I would probably put a high percentage of why I stayed here the first time on George.
On George.
On George.
On George.
Yeah. I would probably put a high percentage on why I stayed here is because of him.
He's quiet, but his gentle spirit.
No, because I sat in the same row as you, and once in a while he would get up, so it wasn't him getting up and coming and shaking my hand, because that's me and him, that's about as far as it went, from one end of the pew to the other. And he would come shake my hand, or I would go shake his. It wasn't that. It was whether he got up or not, he would always look down and point at me and wink at me. I know you're there. And that was, I'd put a high percentage on why I stayed the first time. Because it was like, okay, I'm naturally an introvert, so I'm not going out to seek that. So I'm just sitting here. Someone come to me, they did. If they didn't, it didn't bother me that much. But it made an impression. It was look down, point at me, and wink at me. And that was probably a high percentage of why I stayed. It's fascinating.
Yeah, Don and George came to the door one day, had a truckload of wood after Jen passed away.
Oh, to your house?
Yeah, over to my house. Yeah. Didn't even know they were coming.
Yeah,
and we were burning wood at the time, and he used to cut wood for myself and Grandpa, my mom and Papa.
Right.
And so the next thing I know, here they were at the door, George and Donnell. With a load of wood.
Awesome.
That was nice.
Sometime 83, 84.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the Good Samaritan.
We already are.
Yeah. What would say you narrow the Good Samaritan down into one sentence? What would your sentence be?
Reaching out and caring.
Mm-hmm. Caring. Okay.
He treated him like an equal. We all should be treated like equals.
Okay.
Being respectful of others.
Respectful of others. Okay.
Willing to do it if you see somebody in need.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, willing to help beyond cultural barriers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
I am. We're gonna look at it in those terms, but we're gonna draw some things out that probably might or may not have been said from the pulpit before. This guy, when he was like I said, he was from the Dallas Seminar, and a few things he said, I was like, never thought of that. And like I said, when it comes to who's your neighbor, when Jesus asked that question, it's interesting. So you set it up. We're setting it up, and I like to do the sandwich thing. You have, in chapter 10 of Luke, you have Jesus sending the 72 out. They come back, they're ecstatic in what they could do in the name of Jesus. Then the religious people are mad because they did these things. And a lawyer, which is nothing more fancy at that time, not lawyer that we think of today, was just someone who studied scriptures and understood the Old Testament law. They called them lawyers. So he's getting ready to try to trap Jesus. He asks him, how do I be saved, Jesus? And Jesus, as I said, and we've said it time and time again, Jesus never usually answered the question. He usually asked you another question, because he knew the right question that needed to be answered and not the question that we asked. So he said, well, what do you think? Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, that's a great answer. And Jesus tells him it's a great answer. And then the guy goes, whoa, now I can get Jesus. And in verse 29, the lawyer is trying to get Jesus one more time. And this is where we're gonna start thinking a little bit about what the Good Samaritan's starting to say. Verse 29 says, "But he, wishing to justify and vindicate himself, asked Jesus, 'Who is my neighbor?'" How do I get saved? Jesus goes, "Well, I don't know. You tell me." Well, love God, love my neighbor as myself. Jesus says, "That's a great answer." And the guy's puffed up. He goes, "Well, I really didn't catch him on that, did I?" "Well, then who's my neighbor, Jesus?" And see, he's not asking that question because he wants to do good deeds for everyone or anyone. He wants to know if it's only for the closest one to me. Who's my neighbor? So I know I can do good for just those. Not the world, not anyone. Just my neighbor, because I want to know who my neighbor is. And society does that in different ways. My neighbor is this, they're from there, they have this, they don't have that, or they do this, or they live this way, they live that way. That's my neighbor, not just everybody. Well, I don't go on that side of the tracks, or I don't go on this side of the tracks, don't go on that side of the town, or I don't do it for those people. They're not my neighbors. And we're going to find out that Jesus is making this definition of neighbor deeper than we've ever considered before. So who is my neighbor, he says. Verse 30, where the real meat of the Good Samaritan starts to happen. Jesus replied. Again, he's not answering the question. He's going to tell a story. He's going to let you figure it out. But in the end, he's going to ask him a question and make him answer it. So again, Jesus never really answered the question. But he's going to ask him the right question the right way. The same question the guy asked, but just in a